Now, Erie's premier podcast. News about music, health, and what's happening. It's Breakfast with Nat the Hat in the 814. Sponsored by Erie Insurance.
Well, let's see. We have 14 days left until Santa makes his trek to the 814. I don't know about you, but I got some work to do. Podcast number 9 is Erie's Flagship City District and the Footlights of Fame. Welcoming 2 new trailblazers to Breakfast with Nat the Hat in the 814, high atop the Renaissance Building in downtown Erie. It is Zach Flock, the executive director of the LECOM stage of the Erie Playhouse, and CEO of the Erie Downtown Development Corporation, Drew Whiting. First off, Zach, thanks for coming on the show today.
So good to be here.
I must say, I have enjoyed several of the Erie Playhouse productions under your tutelage, my friend.
Thank you very much.
First one was The Jersey Boys. That was a smash. I loved it. And then Beautiful, the Carole King musical. And help me to remember the name of your lead.
In Beautiful, it was Kate Thiem, played Carole King, and she was just fantastic.
Wow.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm going to tell you something. When I do come to your shows, I love to get the 2 seats in the balcony that are together.
Uh-huh.
I think it's on the left-hand side, and it's just those 2 seats.
Okay.
So nobody can come or go or whatever. And my husband and I, that's the perfect place to watch the show.
Front row balcony is my favorite spot in the theater.
Well, Zach, like I said, there's been some really great things going on at the Erie Playhouse. I'm glad to have you on to talk about it. There is a transformation. And let's talk about your years in the theater and being educated in the 814.
Sure.
Tell folks about you.
Sure. So I first came to the 814 in 2001. That's when I started as a student at Gannon, theater and communication arts major. Very similar experience.
Same thing.
Right? Yeah.
Same thing.
Yeah. And really kind of fell in love with Erie right away. I mean, I loved doing theater at Gannon as a student, and then, getting exposure in, to the wider theater community. I saw my first Playhouse show probably my freshman year. Also saw a couple of shows at the Roadhouse around that time as well.
Yes.
Yeah. And just really got hooked. And I grew up outside of Pittsburgh in the Greensburg area.
Okay.
And grew up doing shows with Greensburg Civic Theater as a child. And coming to Erie, I was expecting community theater here to be pretty much the same as community theater there. And I was immediately blown away by the caliber and the professionalism of the shows that are produced by community theaters that really feel like professional level theaters. And so right away, that hooked me on theater. I ended up sticking around in Erie.
I was going to
my wife and
did you? Where?
Yeah.
What show did you meet your wife on?
The Producers.
That's great.
Yeah.
And what is her name?
Jessica.
Jessica.
She's from Youngstown, Ohio, and came to Erie to go to school at Mercyhurst. And then we met working on The Producers in 2008.
Wow. And when did you get married then?
It was 10 years ago this October, so 2013.
Wow. So you come to the 814 and you stay.
That's right.
So now you're a graduate.
Well, I should say, just to be perfectly clear.
Okay.
We left for about a year and then came back for the Playhouse position when it opened up.
So you were gone for about a year.
We were gone for about a year. We moved closer to my family. We're actually living with my parents. Doesn't get much closer than that. And then just, we missed Erie. We had sort of created a life for ourselves here, and we missed it, and the opportunity came along, and it just seemed like the stars aligned, and it was time to come back.
So you graduate from Gannon. Mm-hmm. What year was that?
2005.
And then did you end up working for Gannon then?
I did. I worked in admissions for Gannon for about 14 years, actually. Completed my master's in public administration while I was working there. And while I was working there, I also started with a group of friends, Drama Shop, which is actually right here in the Renaissance Center.
I wanted to say that. Tell me more about the Drama Shop and the beginnings of that.
Yeah. So, we started Drama Shop in 2011, which would have been after the Roadhouse had closed its doors, after Director's Circle had wrapped up actually in the space here in the Renaissance Center. Mm-hmm. And so, there were a group of us who were involved at the Playhouse, my wife included, Sean Clerkin and some others who loved the Playhouse, loved what they're doing there, but felt that there was maybe a little bit of a niche that was not being filled in the market at the time. A little more contemporary stuff, shows that we knew were not going to sell out a 500-seat auditorium auditorium, but would maybe sell, 50 seats, maybe 20 seats a night, whatever it might be. So Drama Shop was really founded to do those smaller shows and to really be the off-Broadway complement to the Broadway caliber shows at the Playhouse.
So now you leave the Drama Shop then, and then you were still again and doing Drama Shop.
Yeah, so I did Drama Shop up until 2022. And so I'd done that for 11 years. And that was all volunteer, a group of us kind of keeping it going as volunteers. And then actually, as I said, I left Erie. I was working at a college outside of Pittsburgh as the director of marketing there. And so I left Drama Shop, left Erie, was not really doing theater and missed it very much. I will say that.
Now, off mic, we were talking about the fact that you used to be the GM at WERG, where I started in radio as well. What was your name on WERG?
So I just went by Zach. Just no last name, just Zach. Just for the brevity of it.
And Zach, I was there last week. I did an interview last week there and got to see the new digs over there. It is fabulous.
Quite an upgrade for sure.
Quite an upgrade. Were you in the basement of Zern? Because
No,
I was.
I was going to ask you. So I was a step up from that. They had moved into the Walker building on the other corner of 7th and Peach, across from where they are now.
Yes.
Street level, window to the world kind of set up in that studio, which was really cool. But at the same time, you never knew what was going to pass by in the middle of a radio show. It'd be a little distracting at times.
Okay, tell me something about yourself that people may not know about Zach Flock, the executive director of the Erie Playhouse.
Okay, so I think this tends to surprise people, but I'm guessing you may relate to this. Maybe not. But despite the fact that, I've done radio, I'm a theater person ever since I was 12 years old. I am very much an introvert. I don't know. Does that ring true or no?
Not for me.
Okay. I know there are a lot of people in broadcasting, in theater, who until they kind of step into a character or something like that, they tend to be more introverted.
That's interesting. You should say that. I grew up in a very musical family, so you had to step out of that circle, and it's funny because I had Joe Lang, who graduated a couple years behind me on a couple of weeks ago, and from Lakeshore Community Services. And he looked at me and he said, I always watched you and whatever you did. And it used to make me laugh because, these are our peers. These are the people that we worked with. Like I said, he was a couple of years behind me. And I think we all start out as introverts.
Yeah.
But my dad would always say, get on that stage, do what you got to do, and make it happen.
Exactly. And for me, getting on stage was a sort of escape and a way to get outside of being so introverted. I'm the youngest of three. I was the shy kid, all that kind of stuff. So theater was the thing that kind of allowed me to open up. And
I am shocked that we haven't met in the past because our circles are one and the same.
Yeah.
The Playhouse was founded over 100 years ago. And I was reading up that it's the 12th oldest theater in the nation. How exciting for you to be running this organization.
It's really crazy. I mean, it was founded in 1916 as the People's Theater, which I love that old name of it, the People's Theater, because it, what's more community theater than that, right? Than being the People's Theater. And every day I walk downstairs to my office, which is in the lower level of the Playhouse, and I walk past the portraits of all of the former managing and executive directors.
You're number 8, right, Zach? Are you 8?
8 or 9? I think 8.
8?
I want to say 8.
I want to say you're lucky number 8 for sure.
I think there was someone many, many years ago who was sort of interim, and it's, do you count them? Do you not count them? But as far as portraits go, yes.
So looking back, who were some of the greats on the People's stage? Do you know?
Performance wise, there's such a long list of great performers. And I, unfortunately, my experience in Erie really goes back to the early 2000s. But, I hear the names of the legends who have come before, and, some are celebrities. Ann B. Davis from the Brady Bunch.
I was going to say,
I figured that might be who you were looking for.
Sure.
I've heard that Rue McClanahan has graced the stage of, I don't think it was at the current location. I think it might have been actually the old Gannon little theater.
Let me tell you about Ann B. Davis.
Yeah,
when I was in high school and doing theater in high school, I did Annie Get Your Gun. And there was just a little blurb in the paper about me, and it said, could she be the next Ambi Davis? And I would just, to this day, it always makes me chuckle.
No pressure.
To be the next Ambi Davis. But I loved the theater.
Yeah.
I never had the opportunity. I mean, I did a lot of high school and college theater with Gannon and did a couple shows afterwards. But, I found the theater of the mind to be a wonderful area to get myself involved in. And that is radio. But tell us about the mission of the Playhouse.
Sure. So, I mean, we have a mission statement that I won't recite, but what I really take away as being the most important thing is that we are about enriching the community, right?
Yes.
And that to me is so critically important. We have our Playtime program, which is a literacy program that goes out into community schools in Erie.
Bravo.
And it is such an incredible program. Trisha Yates is the Playtime coordinator. Talk about, legends of the Erie stage. Trisha, an incredible performer in her own right, coordinates a program that puts our facilitators into schools across Erie County, both in the city and in the county at large, to really help develop a love of reading in pre-K, first grade, second grade, very young children, to get them excited about the possibilities that they can discover. And they get books to take home with them. The hope is that they take that book home, and whether they're actually reading it or kind of reciting from memory what they remember about the lesson, but also engaging their family and making it really a family-wide excitement and enthusiasm.
Zach, there are so many other things that the Playhouse does community-wise too. You've got some great classes that people can attend. Tell us more about that.
Sure. So we actually have a new youth theater and education director named Annika Lexfold, who just joined our staff in August. She was from the Minneapolis, St. Paul area and just joined the team. So we have a new slate of classes launching actually January 8th is the first session of those. We're doing 3 sessions, 3 7-week sessions throughout the winter and spring semester, if you will. That's my higher ed background there. Everything's in semesters. But we've got an exciting range of classes really for all ages of children, including some activities for the entire family, some Saturday morning kind of story time type things for the family, which is really exciting. Audition 101 is what we're calling one of the courses, but it really is a little bit broader than that. What's nice about our youth theater courses is that they're small courses, right? We tend to have a handful, maybe a dozen students in a class. And so they're really getting personalized attention, and the curriculum sort of evolves based on who's in the class as well. So if you have a bunch of really experienced kids, if you have kids with differing abilities, it can really be tailored so that they're getting the most out of it. So, each course has its own name and its own description, but really they end up being customized as the semester rolls on to fit the needs of those students.
Well, first off, youth theater is fabulous because that's how you want to get the kids started on the stage. And I'm amazed at some of them kids on your stage.
Oh, absolutely. We just had Disney Descendants.
Yes.
And I will admit, I went into that. I'm 40 years old. My wife and I don't have kids. I thought, I'm not really going to like this necessarily. I'm sure it's going to be great, but it's not for me. It was a great show. I loved it. I really had an incredible time watching it. So, you might think, okay, youth theater, it's kids on stage. Is it really for me? And it ends up being these really high quality, top-notch productions. So,
and I think people need to realize how much talent we have here in the 814.
Absolutely. We are incredibly fortunate.
Yes. So I know that, you, like most nonprofit organizations, have volunteers. They're like the foundation of your organization. If somebody wanted to become a volunteer at the Erie Playhouse, I'm sure there are plenty of things that you can find them to do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, the most obvious being performers on stage, right? We have regular auditions for all of our performances. They are all of our productions are open for anybody to audition. There might be, age restrictions as far as, some casts are 18 and over. Others, we have opportunities for children 5 and up or whatever the specifics of a production might be. So there's information on our website, erieplayhouse.org. But in addition to performers, whatever your interest is, we will find a way to get you involved. Ushering, the list goes on and on. Whatever you're interested in. If you love sewing, we'll connect you with Ryan and Crystal in the costume shop.
I was going to say, volunteerism at the Erie Playhouse is a lot encompassing. I mean, you could find your niche. And every time I go to a show, I feel quite comfortable.
Good.
The volunteers always make you feel so comfortable being there. I did win the 50-50 drawing.
Wow. Good
like
for
last, I'm trying to think what last, but it was exciting. I was like, I never win anything.
And I will say, when the audience is pretty big, and some of our shows have had some pretty big audiences lately, that 50-50 can be a nice little treat to walk away with.
Well, Zach Vlog from the Erie Playhouse. Zach, I love when you get on at the beginning of each performance. You are taped, and you talk about the 40th anniversary. So
yes.
Tell folks about that.
Yeah. So, and I just mentioned that I turned 40 as well. So it's a nice little bit of synergy there.
I wish I could say the same.
We are celebrating the 40th anniversary of the Erie Playhouse in its current location on West 10th Street in what was originally the Strand Theater. It was, of course, an old movie house that opened in 1948. The Playhouse moved there on New Year's Eve of 1983. That was the very first performance.
So apparently something really big is cooking on New Year's Eve over there.
We have quite a concert in store, about 100 or so. I would actually, including the orchestra, I would say more than 100 performers on stage, which is really incredible. Some of your favorite Broadway hits, maybe some stuff that you're not as familiar with. I will say the first show 40 years ago in that space was Annie. So now Richard Davis is directing and planning the concert, but I would not be surprised if there's a song or two from Annie that might pop up in that mix. So.
Richard, the very best.
Oh, absolutely.
So what time is the show, so we can get to that show, because I'm very interested in starting out my New Year's Eve with you.
Absolutely. It's a 7:30 show, regular, 7:30 start time for us. It gets you home, depending on what your plans are. It either gets you home or to your next
destination
before the ball drops at midnight. So a really great way to ring in the new year. And I'm really looking forward to it,
Zach,
selfishly.
Right. And the last couple shows that I've been to, it is such a great feeling to walk out that door. And I like to just stand in front of the Playhouse and listen to people say remarkable and wonderful things about the shows. Like that was you know what I mean? You get all this buzz. And as they're walking away to go to their cars, I love that. That's got to be a great feeling for you as the executive director to know that people are so grateful to come down and see such great talent on the stage.
Absolutely. And not for myself, but because I know how many people put work into every single one of those productions. It really, the mantra, it takes a village, is so true with the shows that we do at the Playhouse, from those that are on staff to the many volunteers that are involved, to the family members who basically put up with their spouses or whoever, children, mothers, fathers,
bringing them to
not being around,
not being around,
rehearsal for weeks.
Yes.
And so, I mean, I have trouble. I'm a terrible audience member. That's another thing for people to know about me. I have a hard time just sitting still and watch. No, it's not that I'm critical. I'm just fidgety. So I have a hard time sitting watching a show. So one of the things I love to do is to stand in the back of the theater and watch there. And a lot of times what I end up doing is watching the audience watch the show. And I have stood in the back of the theater and thought to myself, I get a little choked up in the moment. And I think, honest to God, I have the best job in Erie.
You do.
And I do not take that for granted. I absolutely love it.
That's fantastic. And, I just saw you were in the news about the new marquee.
Yes. Yeah. So if you have driven by prior to about a month ago now, the one side of our marquee had a great big dead spot in it that just was not working. It's a video screen. The marquee that we just replaced was a video screen put in about a decade or so ago. And unfortunately, technology evolved so quickly that it had become damaged, just normal kind of wear and tear. And we couldn't just buy the pieces to fix it. We had to completely upgrade the marquee. The trade-off is it's now state-of-the-art, incredible technology, really sharp images.
It dresses up downtown Erie, my friend.
It absolutely does. And the thing I always say is I want the entrance to the Playhouse. That is the front door to the Playhouse. And I want it to be representative of the quality that you're going to see on the stage when you enter the Playhouse. And what's really cool is now you can actually see photos of cast members of production photos, publicity photos on the marquee, which is something that the image quality just wasn't there before. So it might sound minor to some folks.
But we're really lights kind of people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You want the footlights, you want the marquee lights, you want all that for a great
just
stage.
That experience of walking toward the theater, before a show and seeing that marquee all lit up and those images flashing across the screen. It's exciting.
Well, a great night in downtown Erie is coming down here to have something to eat. There are so many wonderful places to have dinner and then and see a great show at a very reasonable price.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Like I get all tickled up. I'm like, where am I getting Carole King, the musical Beautiful, for this price? With that caliber.
Especially, when you feel like you're actually listening to Carole King, right?
She was. She played the piano.
Yeah.
She did all that groovy stuff. Mm-hmm. And I got to tell you, though, I did log on because I wanted to see if there was an older Carole King because I would have auditioned, actually.
Yeah. Yeah. I could see that.
I really did. And then I kind of giggled because I logged on and said somebody around 40, but she was absolutely wonderful.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
She commanded that performance.
Absolutely. And we are so lucky to have performers of that caliber in every show that we do. You mentioned you saw Jersey Boys.
Oh.
The ensemble there and Owen Hitt, who played Frankie Valli, just incredible performances all around.
I think all of them jumping up at the end of each of those shows reminds me how important it is that the standing ovations for these musicals are just incredible. What's going on next year?
Wow.
Can we talk about that?
We can absolutely. Yeah, it's out there. Our 2024 season has been announced and we're actually calling it our season of blockbusters. That's how big it is. So
yes,
we'll start off the season. I'll do my best to name them all, but I don't have a cheat sheet in front of me. So
no problem
if I leave anything off. We open the season in January with Tootsie, which is a newer musical based on the movie that everybody knows and loves. So that'll open in January. We've got Guys and Dolls coming up later in the year. We've got Newsies, Sweeney Todd, Beauty and the Beast making its return to the Playhouse stage for the first time in 20 years. So that's a big one for sure. We've got plays. We've got Inherit the Wind, which is an incredibly powerful play, and also Shawshank Redemption, which is an exciting one.
Well, I didn't get the chance to see Misery.
Yeah.
How did Misery go?
It was really cool. It was really cool.
Who played?
Yeah. So
who played the lead in Misery?
Sue Ellen Wojciechowski played the Kathy Bates role. And it's funny because Sue Ellen, if you ever meet her, is one of the sweetest, most down-to-earth people in the world. And it works perfectly for that part because, of course, the whole thing about the character is that she seems sweet and down-to-earth. And
she's...
Then Misery arrives, right? And then Matt Fuchs played the part originated by James Caan in the film. And he's just an absolutely incredible performer.
Like I said, I've been gone. I left in 2011 and came back in late 2020 into 2021. So I've been away and I've come back, and it gives me the opportunity to reacquaint myself with all the wonderful things that are going on in our community. And the Playhouse has not let me down one bit.
Well, that's great to hear.
How about the holidays? Besides the New Year's Eve show, which I'm going to need to get my tickets to, how about any of the other shows that are going on this holiday season? Yeah,
so It's a Wonderful Life will wrap on December 17th. Christmas classic. Everybody knows the Jimmy Stewart movie. This is actually a musical version of that. So it's really cool and not a lot of people know it. So we're excited to share that show with everybody. And then we have a special performance on December 23rd, actually 2 performances. Anyone who is familiar with RuPaul's Drag Race, Alaska is the character name. portrayed by Justin Honnard, who actually is born and raised in Erie. So Alaska will be doing 2 Christmas shows on December 23rd, a 3 p.m. and an 8 p.m. The 8 p.m. is completely sold out, and the 3 p.m. is very close to sold out.
Wow.
So we're very excited that Alaska / Justin is returning home for the holidays to the Erie Playhouse. Justin was actually a cast member in our production of Hair in the early 2000s. So it is very much a homecoming, and we're excited for that.
So we can't get the 8 o'clock show, but we can certainly, maybe a few tickets are left at the 3 after.
You can try for the 3 o'clock.
3 o'clock. Yeah. Okay.
But it's going fast.
It is Zach Flock, Executive Director of the Erie Playhouse. And Zach, sum up your successes for 2023.
Oh, well,
there were a lot of them.
I mean,
when did you start?
I started in mid-May.
Okay.
I started in mid-May. Now, the season was already well underway under the capable hands of Richard Davis. So really what we've had, I mean, all the shows this year have really been just incredible. And Richard, as our artistic director, deserves the credit for that and the teams that he assembles for each and every production. I will say, we have about 30% audience growth over last year, which I'm a data nerd when it comes to this kind of stuff.
That's great data, though.
It's really exciting. And, I know obviously we're still, coming out of a pandemic in terms of people getting back to normal behaviors and activities. And so, it's taken a while for that audience growth to happen, but it's really exciting to see people coming back. And as you said, to stand there and to hear people, leaving and having such positive experiences.
Well, being in the theater too myself, for many, many years, we used to wait for the papers at 4 o'clock in the morning so we could read about ourselves and see if the critics loved the show. But it's different today.
I miss those days. Yeah.
I do too. Like we'd actually be lining up waiting for the paper boy to come fill up the papers and grab those papers so we could read. And it's different now.
I would say it's sort of a double-edged sword, right? Because on one hand, you're not having to live or die based on the opinion of one reviewer, right?
Right on.
And so there's a sort of a more egalitarian approach to it, right? That we're relying on word of mouth and how individuals feel rather than just one writer. But the flip side of that is the arts don't get as much love and attention as they used to. And
I know.
that's disappointing, frankly. So, I miss it in that regard that we don't get those regular reviews. And, but like anything, it's evolving. There are, podcasts now devoted to local theater.
I am going to tell you something and of course, not only do I have this podcast with LECOM, but I'm one of the ladies of LECOM. So I get the opportunity to talk about your shows.
Sure.
And talk about how awesome the Carole King musical was and the Jersey Boys, because we play all that music.
Right.
So every time one of the songs would come up, I'm like, you need to get out and see this show. Yeah. So I think with it, even though we don't have the print to do what we need to do, I think microphones are taking over and the internet has been great. And we can let folks know what a great job you're doing.
Absolutely. We appreciate that for sure.
It's Zach Flock, Executive Director of the Erie Playhouse. Thank you, friend, for sharing what's happening with our gem right here on 10th and State. Thank you. Then, of course, we got Alaska tickets for the 3 o'clock show. It's a Wonderful Life wrapping up on the 18th. And then the New Year's Eve gig. I gotta get my hands on those 2 seats in the balcony for that show.
Well, what you ought to do is get a season ticket.
Let's talk about that briefly. Can you? Sure.
So if you get a season ticket, you can choose which seats you have and which performance you have them. So for instance, if you want to always come to the second Saturday of each production, you can get a season ticket and you can say, okay, I want AA 2 and 4 every second Saturday, and we will lock those in for the year. So a really great option if you want to make sure you get those 2 seats you love so much.
Perfect. I'm so glad you talked about season tickets. And people can just log on to, is it the EriePlayhouse.com?
EriePlayhouse.org.
Okay.
EriePlayhouse.org. You can also stop by the box office in person. We're open 10 to 6 on weekdays and 10 to 2 on Saturdays as well.
Well, happy holidays and all that great stuff.
Same to
And the
you.
marquee just is fabulous. And thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule, Zach, to come on the breakfast show with me.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
Downtown Erie is transforming, and to help spark this revitalization is the Erie Downtown Development Corporation CEO, Drew Whiting. Drew, welcome to Breakfast with Nat the Hat in the 814. How are you?
Great. Thank you for having me.
Good, good. Well, I'd love our listeners to get a peek into your past life before you've come to Erie, Pennsylvania. So tell me where you were born and raised, and
Sure.
give me some background on you.
Yeah. So I was born in a suburb of Buffalo, New York, called Akron, New York, and spent the first 9 years of my life in Akron. We moved to Clarence, New York, and I went to high school, Clarence High School. Graduated from there. I've got a younger brother, younger sister. My parents are both, grew up in Akron, lived in Western New York their entire lives. Ended up at college at Notre Dame.
Nice.
And graduated with a business degree, finance major, and followed a bunch of my friends to Chicago, where I went to law school and attended Loyola University Chicago. Graduated in 2011.
Great. And have you been in Chicago since then? What have you been doing besides, law?
Yeah.
basically?
So from 2008 to end of 2021, I lived in Chicago. I started a law firm with a law school classmate almost right out of school during the tail end of the recession in late 11 to early 2012 at my kitchen table. And we scraped and clawed our way through a few really tough years of learning how to be adults and run a business at the same time. Had a lot of fun doing it too.
Sure.
Met a couple of other people along the way, ended up merging into their law firm. And that story repeated itself a couple more times throughout the years. My business was always focused on working with early stage entrepreneurs, startup companies, and I would stay with them through their growth life cycles, through to exit in some cases, through many financing rounds, and all the things that go along with running a business throughout that life cycle.
So basically what you did is build something for yourself, and then now you're helping other people to build their relationships with business and getting involved. And then when did you hear about this job?
Yeah. So by the time I met an Erie girl in
Did you?
2012 as I was starting my business. So she went through that period of my life with me, which was not easy.
Sure.
And 2015, we get married. 2018, at the end of the year, we have twins who are turning 5 in a couple of weeks. And we, for the most part, got them through a pandemic in a city where we didn't have family. And really started to grow an appreciation for having that resource of family nearby when we were back here on visits and when they would come to visit us.
Right.
And it led to us thinking more and more about being closer. And eventually the decision was made to move to Erie. When I say that, it was really 10 years of visiting Erie for me that sold me on this place. And I was the one in probably 2019 that started pushing, hey, maybe we start thinking about moving back. And then the pandemic set in and we're not attached to office jobs anymore. And she caved and we're here.
What is your wife's name?
Emily.
Emily. Yeah. And the twins, what are their names?
Annie and Augie.
Awesome.
So yeah, we had, we built a really nice careers, and myself a business and lives and friends and everything there. But at the end of the day, it's not a unique story. A lot of people want to be closer to home. Right. And that's where we wanted to be as well. And I moved here with the idea that we'd be close to family, that I'd be working remotely for this law firm, doing what I've always been doing. And pretty soon after getting to Erie, getting to know the people here and seeing the opportunity around town, started to understand that there was more happening than I had ever bargained for. And it's not just the activity on the street, but it's really the attitude of the young people in town, the creative class of Erie,
right,
and the entrepreneurial ecosystem is budding here the way that I saw it budding in Chicago in 2011, 12, 13, you can see where that's headed pretty quickly when you've already watched it happen. And granted, Chicago's a different place. It's a different scale, but the framework for what was happening there and what grew into what's now one of the biggest tech hubs in the country was happening here too.
Sure.
And on one hand, I'm an attorney working in this legal field that while I had some success in that side of things, never really the service of practicing law was never what I was passionate about. It was always about building something and helping other people build things. And had gotten involved in some real estate projects in Chicago late in our time there. And so I'd already kind of been looking in that direction. And in 2021, about 6 months after getting here, I find this building where I'm hitting golf balls inside during the winter. And it looks a lot like the kind of places that I would hit golf balls at in the winter in Chicago, but those places had golf simulators and you could get a beer after work and you could have lunch there. And this place didn't have that. So I'm talking to the owner about what he's doing. And it's more of a golf academy, an instructional place. It's not really the same business. And I just said, look, if you ever decide to sell this place, let me know. And the building was eventually listed. I reached out a few months later and made an offer. And pretty soon I'm in the process of buying this building. And I realize it's time to build out a golf business in here. And I've got a practice that I have to also operate, and kids and home, responsibilities of being a dad and a husband. And so luckily, through another Erie family connected with my wife's, I had known a guy years ago that had plans to build an indoor golf business, but never quite got off the ground. Reached out to him. He was gung-ho to get this thing going, and the two of us took off on that effort. So we start the redevelopment process, designing this business. At the same time, the EDC job goes into like this search for an executive. I'd had a few conversations around town about that being a potential opportunity. Right around the same time, a news story ran about what we were doing at this building with the golf business. And our thesis behind this was, if you give people something to do in our downtown core, you brighten up a corner of the city and you turn what should be a prime destination in our middle of our Renaissance district into something that people can see as a destination.
Right.
That you can have a big impact on that part of the city right around you. And that EDC job was looking for somebody that happened to think in those types of terms.
Sure.
So I think there was a natural match there, and being ready to let go of a legal practice, or at least dial it way back anyway. And in the mood to build something again, and excited about this community. There wasn't a better fit that I could dream up than to do more of what I had set out to do with the project at 10th and State.
Well, I got to tell you, you're in the right place at the right time, because I truly, we sit up here on the 11th floor of the Renaissance Center, see changes happening quickly. And I know that this city has so much to offer. And you're right. It's not just a summer destination. There's a lot of wonderful things to do in the winter months. So I'm really glad that you took on this new responsibility. What has it been, 6 months for you? Around that?
4.5.
I have heard stories. Somebody was telling me not too long ago that you slept in your office for many occasions. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah. When you're an entrepreneur getting a business started, and this is back 2010 or 11, 12, 13, 14-ish, you are building a business, and especially in the service industry as a lawyer, accountant, whatever you might be doing, there's this very common issue where you have project work that's inconsistent. You don't have residuals like you do in an insurance business, and you never know when that work's going to come and when you're going to need more people. And so what happens is you stay lean and you stay in a place where you can afford payroll. And then all of a sudden you get really busy. It's impossible to get somebody trained up to get the right person on staff. And you might not want to if you know it's just one or two projects, because when those projects are gone, are you going to be able to afford those people again? So you end up in this endless loop of being overworked and then scrambling to find the next project, and you're on the sales trail again.
Right.
And it took a little while to learn how to get out of that. You build consistent revenue streams, you build a business development sales process, you start to learn how to manage your cash a little bit better once you get the revenues going, and you can get out of that spiral or off of that plateau or whatever you want to call it.
Sure.
But you do what you have to do. And it's, it wouldn't be news to anybody who's ever had a startup that you had to take the night because you're going to work till 4 a.m. You got a meeting at 7 a.m. What am I going to do? Go home?
Right.
It's going to take me an hour to get there, an hour to get back. No, just get up when you got to get up, take a nap at your chair, whatever you got to do. So yeah, did that on many occasions. And, you learn that kind of persistence, that grind, if you're channeling that energy in the right direction, you have faith that it's going to pay off, and you hope that it does ultimately. And
we call that great work ethic. Wouldn't you say that be a really solid work ethic?
It's that, but it's also a
drive, passion.
it's a little bit of faith. I mean,
sure,
in the universe returning what you're putting into it. And that's something that I think you don't really learn about in business school, but you learn that on the job when you put in hours and hours and hours of work, and you're like, where's that next project going to come from? And the phone rings and it's somebody, or an email comes in, it's somebody you hadn't talked to in 18 months, but they're like, hey, I'm finally ready to go. And that's the project you needed. In that kind of a business, those are the patterns, and you learn to deal with a lack of comfort. You learn to deal with a lack of security and with that sense of panic. And it's something that you either can handle or you can. It's a grit. Right. And there are, everybody will say it's perseverance, it's hard work and everything, but there's some level of luck involved in all of that.
Sure, there is.
You got to put yourself in a position to take advantage of it and to be present for those opportunities. But nobody gets there without a little bit of luck or some help from others. So, that's a big part of it too.
How about a mentor? You got somebody that you could really say that mentored you?
Yeah.
Through these really tough years for you.
I think in my life, I had some direct mentors over the years that were very close, that helped with like teaching me how to practice law. You need that when you're starting a law firm, basically out of law school. You need somebody to actually teach you how to practice. There's also the people that you look to as those who you set your vision towards as an ideal. I have that, and I tend to find that in all phases of my life, no matter where I land. People around me who represent an ideal for how you should be a good father, how you should be a good husband, how you should be a good friend. And then those who demonstrate the work ethic and the business vision that you aspire to have as well. So you can draw that from many sources. And that's kind of how I've always aggregated, there's a saying that you are the product of the 5 closest people around you. And I've always thought that, and the five closest people around me are generally very different people. Right. Not all of them even get along with each other. But there are things that I really admire about each of people in my life. And, you take the best things from them, and hopefully you can integrate that into your life in a way that's ideal for you. So
tell me about your leadership skills, and especially with leading the EDDC now.
Yeah. So for one, I think you said it earlier, right at the beginning, that I was the spark that was going to, lead the EDDC and to this renovation or renaissance that Erie's undergoing. But, the spark was really the stakeholders and the operators early on, Tim DeCastro, Tom Hagen, John Persinger, Matt Wachter, right, Nicole Reitzel, and the team that they put around them, and the stakeholders that they were able to get involved. Those people were really the spark. I see myself as having a little bit different role in a different time. They were able to really shock the system, get things going, and get something in place that we can build upon.
Right.
My role is to come in, one, not screw that up. Let's take the baton and make sure that we finish the job that was started on this first phase.
Very good.
But 2, let's set the vision for where we're going in the future and make sure that we are putting our best foot forward to take advantage of what I see as a wave of momentum in new development and a renaissance in this downtown that it hasn't seen in 100 years.
Right.
So I want to make sure that we're including the widest swath of the business community and stakeholders in this community in our effort. I want to make sure that we are operating efficiently, that we're being responsible with capital, and we're being responsible with the trust that the community is putting in us to do the right things by everybody. And I want to, within my own team, I want to make sure that the people that the absolutely wonderful team that I inherited is being served in the best way possible to the extent that I can. How can I give them the best opportunities to grow as professionals, to find opportunities for themselves, to take leadership and ownership of the different marketing, operations, finance, hospitality, security, safety, operational functions that we have in our organization? And how do I set a vision that we can all believe in and communicate that in a way where everybody's bought in and where you can, as a leader, create other leaders and get yourself in a position where you truly can allow people to run, utilize their creativity and their abilities in the best way possible.
Love it. I've got Drew Whiting, CEO of the Erie Downtown Development Corporation, on the show today. And let's talk, Drew, about the various projects. I believe there's like 12 new projects that I see on the website. The one is the climbing wall. That is the newest project, correct? The Ascend Climbing Gym?
That's right. Yep. We have some nice new shiny objects to show off right now.
Great.
The Ascend Climbing Gym is a group out of Pittsburgh. This is their 4th gym. It's a wonderful amenity. We have, as of yesterday, I think there were 618 members of that gym, and I think, turn 1 month old tomorrow.
I was going to say, it just opened up.
Absolutely wonderful reception. We're seeing adoption of that amenity here by people who've never climbed. I'm getting texts, I'm getting social media messages, calls like daily, people telling me I've never climbed before and I've been in there every day for the last 2 weeks. Like, this is the most wonderful thing. My kids are in there 3 days a week, gets all their energy out. They love it. It's engaging physically and mentally. But it's not just climbing either. There's a full gym there for cardio and weight training. There's a group exercise yoga space. So there's more than just climbing. It's a full wellness facility. And it's been incredible to watch that launch over the last month. We also, in the next few weeks, pending some licensing that is currently stuck in Harrisburg for 1, the liquor license, and 2, getting our indoor smoking exemption so that a cigar bar can operate. We'll be opening the Brig. We could have opened 3 weeks ago if we weren't waiting on paperwork at the state level.
Right.
Any small business owner that's dealt with that knows how that goes in Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm.
And but yeah, we will be open there very, very shortly. Again, another amenity where we're selling memberships and pre-selling certain offerings within the business, and they're flying.
Right.
So I think the adoption of that, much different crowd, much different type of business. Mm-hmm. We're seeing the same type of excitement and momentum. All of this is backed up by the thesis of, you give people a thing to do, a place to gather, they're going to show up in this town. Mm-hmm. And that is really the key to the ongoing success of this turnaround. The Erie Downtown Partnership does not get the credit that it deserves for what it's been doing as well. They're programming 100 events in our downtown every year.
Oh, I know.
Whether it's yoga at the Bicentennial Tower or at Pier 6, or it's in the park, the live music events they're doing weekly, at least once a week, the movie nights, all of the festivals, they knock it out of the park, and they're getting people drawn into our downtown on a very regular basis. And it's such a huge thing for the city. They're an underfunded organization, and It's unbelievable what they're able to do with the small staff they have.
Sure. Just last week, we lit up the square. The square looked wonderful. You know, a lot of people went into the food hall. It was just a great night of family activity. And I think that's so important for young families like yourself to come downtown and be able to have things to do and places to go and enjoy what we have here, which, you know, the lake and the bay are absolutely beautiful.
Yeah. And I mean, if you think about it, there's things to do with the family. You can go to karaoke night on Tuesday at the food hall.
Mm-hmm.
Go see live music on Wednesday every week at the food hall. We're going to start doing trivia nights. If you want to go on a date night, you can hit Bricks for dinner. You can go to the Cigar Lounge, which also has a cocktail bar. There's going to be live music in the summer, almost every night somewhere near downtown in Erie. Right. For those who have not spent time downtown in the last 30 years, 20 years, 2 years, it's time to visit again. There is actually a lot to do. You know, the stigma that every city has is the safety, it's the parking, it's all of those things. But yeah, but that's also where there's things to do. That's why people gather in those places.
And I'm telling you, what you pay to park down here is nothing compared to every place else that we've ever been to. Parking is, you know, everything is reasonable here. Isn't that so much nicer than when you were in Chicago?
Yeah, it's easier and it's reasonable. I mean, I lived 3 miles from downtown and it would take us 40 minutes to get there. You'd pay $40 to park. And then whatever you were going to do would cost 6 times as much.
Right.
Like, it is a much different place here in Erie. The quality of life and the cost of living here is definitely more reasonable. That doesn't resonate with people who haven't seen what that is elsewhere. But I think it is definitely we're on the right track here in keeping things in a affordable realm for most families.
Right. I mean, you've got to collaborate with a lot of different entities down here to make things work. And I feel that everybody's on the same page when it comes to making sure that people enjoy themselves when we're down here, like talking to Zach from the Playhouse and all the fun things there and all the shows that are coming in, the new marquee that looks absolutely wonderful. How about residential spaces? Let's talk about those.
Yeah. So before the EDC built anything, there was in our footprint about 14 residences.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe it was somewhere like 100% of the housing in downtown Erie, the 501 zip code, was either subsidized or student housing. There's, you can read a million studies. The concentration of poverty in a place is not good for the place or the people that live in it. And so what the initial mission was let's get some market rate apartments in here. The perception of that to those who were seeing buildings getting knocked down and newer, nicer buildings with high rents getting put up is understandable when it was negative. But I think the rebalancing of that demographic mix in the downtown is healthy for both the place and the people. We have had really strong adoption absorption of our apartments. To date, we've opened 76 apartments.
And those are just rentals, correct?
Those are rentals at market rates.
At market rate.
And people are paying those rates. Our typical tenant is early 30s professional, but that's not all. There's some empty nesters. We have some, students. We have a mix, but the adoption of those apartments, people that want to live, work, and play in the same place, has been strong. We have 32 more coming, so we'll have about 110 by the end of it. And we're pretty confident that we'll be looking at building more. And it might not be the same types of apartments, but that this initial set has proven out that does work. Mm-hmm. We have the Avalon being 219 apartments at a little bit lower cost. The idea that it's affordable for those who are making in the 60th percentile of adjusted median income for the zip code. So those making between $35,000 and $70,000 a year should be able to afford those rents at or below 20% of their income for the year.
Right.
So that'll be another option. And we've been looking at the possibility of building places that you can own. I get a lot of inbound from people asking, hey, I'd love to be downtown, but I'd rather be building equity than paying rent.
Mm-hmm.
Understandable.
Right.
Why don't we look at what we could do to provide that option? So we have some plans that we're looking at that could potentially work for that piece of it. The other big thing we don't have, and I know it's not part of this question, but I get asked about office space all the time. Kind of counterintuitive if you read a headline anywhere right now, but Class A office space in downtown Erie is very rare. It exists at Erie Insurance and UPMC and not too many other, a couple of law firms and not too many other places.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of those other missing things in our downtown. So if you are a startup that wants to move from, Harbor Creek to downtown Erie, because that's where your employees want to live, where are you going to set up? And, the days when, Matt White had to build his own building and office space for Whitethorn.
Right.
We want to be able to be a place where people can land, find a place to get started, keep their employees in town, and really build a thriving economy for our small businesses as well.
Well, say, what do we got in store in the new year?
So the first part of this project, which was started 5 years ago, which is mostly live right now, we have a grocery store, a food hall. We have 76 apartments. We have a bunch of retail shops, Bricks restaurant. We have the Brig opening in a couple weeks, which is the cigar lounge, a cocktail bar, and TNT Golf, which is going to open up a beer hall and indoor putt-putt facility in the first quarter, early second quarter of this coming year on the west side of State Street, right across from the Ascend climbing gym.
Ah, okay.
The Ascend opened up in November. Those are coming next, right across the street. And then the goal is for 5th Street to open up in late April, early May. And along 5th Street, you'll have the front entrance to both the front entrance to the grocery store and the back entrance to the food hall on the south side. On the north, we have a building that's being completed right now and a parking garage that's being completed right now. So a 312 spot parking garage should alleviate some of that street parking concern right there between State and Peach, between 5th and 4th. And then we also have a building that wraps around that parking garage, which will have 32 new apartments, 1-2 bedrooms, Dave's Diner,
Dave, that's awesome.
Yeah, another licensed bar / restaurant. Mm-hmm. And then we're working on a couple of other ideas for another tenant on that space as well. But that's all. When we go into next summer, the first phase of what we've done here will be complete. What we'll be kicking off is phase 2. And the primary project for phase 2 at the early stage is going to be completing that gap between North Park Road and 5th Street, between the co-op and the grocery store. So it's kind of the missing tooth if you're looking from the park at those buildings,
right?
Where we intend to build some office. There'll be a little park back there and it'll connect the food hall and the co-op.
Nice. Well, I can't help but to encourage folks to come downtown over the holidays, not only to enjoy the lights, but all the small businesses. Check out the food hall, all the great eats, enjoy family time at the Ascended Climbing Gym, and the array of arts and entertainment is over the top. So much gratitude to you, Drew, from the Downtown Development Corporation for sharing the mission and the passion that your team has in regards to downtown Erie and making a comeback. So up next, we got the Polish Show with Bob and Alice. And you can find Breakfast with Nat the Hat and the 814 on our LECOM app, Spotify, and Nat the Hat and the 814 on YouTube. Next week, I'm having my LECOM team over here on the 11th floor for a holiday show and party. And I can't think of a better way to celebrate number 10 podcast, because this is all brand new to me too, Drew. And as we celebrate the second week of Advent, remember the gifts of time and love are surely the basic ingredients of a truly Merry Christmas. So don't forget, next week, it's the LECOM Christmas show, and have a blessed week in the 814.
You've been tuned in to Breakfast with Nat the Hat in the 814, sponsored by Erie Insurance on 88.5 and 102.7 LECOM Radio.